We figured we'd kind of get started while you're eating your meal. Hopefully you're enjoying your food. Our Education Committee Chair, Dan McPhillips. Dan, why don't you stand up and raise your hand. Dan has done a great job with the Education Committee and created a municipal roast to provide something new and entertaining to combine with our educational component. Here's basically how it works. One lucky person was chosen months ago to be the guest honoree to sit up on this stage and take a beating from 3 of his or her peers. Each speaker will receive 5 minutes to speak, and the guest will have 5 minutes for a rebuttal. This year's honoree is the one and only George Komelasky. George, why don't you do us the honor by coming up and sitting in that little chair there?
Wow, George.
A roast wouldn't be complete without a traditional roast master. And who better to do the honor than George's manager, Bob Pellegrino.
Paybacks.
Good evening, everyone. I can't tell you what a pleasure and a privilege it is to do this tonight. You know, when I was first asked to be roast master, I thought for a second, I said, wow, there is so much material there, I just don't know where to start. You all know George, most of you know George, those of you who don't. George has been around Bucks County in local politics for a very, very long time. I mean a very long time. And he's been very influential in shaping the county's future, and certainly Northampton Township and even the Commonwealth. So I've got a few pictures here to show you. First one is George with William Penn, and he's signing a treaty with the Indians. The next one is George with General Washington, and they're conferring over Manhattan. Then the next one is George signing the Declaration of Independence. Now, you know he's not a signature, but he was there, and if you look closely, you can see him in the coonskin cap on the left. And here's George with Abraham Lincoln signing the Emancipation Proclamation, and he's sporting a very nice beard. And Pat, you might, take a look at that. I think it looks pretty good. The next thing George was involved with was with Ronald Reagan signing the expansion of the Voting Bill of Rights. And you can see he's on the left, he's happy, he's clapping. Those of you who don't know, George is actually descended from royalty. And in Northampton circles, for many, many years, he's known as King George. Now, here's one of my favorite pictures of George. And I have this picture hanging near my desk, and I look at it every day. And here's George explaining to our former police chief how vast this kingdom really is. Now, a couple things you all need to know about George. George loves to play games. And one of his favorite games is called Stump the Manager. He loves to play this game. And he does it, in the meeting. And it usually is a series of questions designed to stump me, and so I'm fumbling for an answer. It's a game he likes to play, and what he really doesn't know is that he's like 0 for 10 because I just make answers up when I don't know. One other thing about George is he likes to always sit at the head of the table, and for literally 24 years in our caucus room, he sat at the head of the table. And then an election happened, and lo and behold, another person, when George entered the room, was sitting in his chair. So George George decided to go sit at the other end of the table. Now, it doesn't matter where George sits, because George is always sitting at the head of the table. But what troubled me was, because he's just a little Lithuanian kid, he doesn't know that he's not supposed to sit with his back to the door or a window, as my people will tell you not to do. So if you've noticed George when he came in this room, he's kind of circling the table because these are round tables. He just doesn't know where to sit because it's not a rectangular table. So at this point, I'm going to ask Peter Palestina to come up. Mr. Palestina was a supervisor in Northampton for 24 years and served on the board with George, and he has some things to say.
You know, at first I didn't care to be a speaker because I thought it was a testimonial. And I really didn't have anything good to say about George, but when Bob said to me, no, it's a roast, I said, okay. After serving with George for 22 years as a supervisor, where I often had to bite my tongue, I jumped at the opportunity tonight. To roast George, really, we don't have enough time. You know, some kids are chronic bedwetters, visit Santa Claus at Christmas time, leave the lights on at bedtime, help mom make cookies, play hide and seek, cry and complain. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll talk about his adult life later. A lot of people refer to George as Mr. Excitement. You know, he doesn't even know he's here right now. He's known as a loner, but that's not by choice. He's been called arrogant, pompous, rude, egotistical, condescending. Well, look at it this way. A wife ought to know. A lot of people learn by their mistakes, so George should be a scholar. They say he never makes the same mistake twice, but that's because he's always making new ones. You know, George, in saying some of these nasty things about you, it makes me feel so good. Seriously, though, let me say that I think of you as one of my family. Let me also say that I don't like my family. George is really a stand-up guy, but not for the reason you may think. It's because he's usually standing up. Tonight's different, he's sitting down. But it's usually in the back of the room. He doesn't like to sit down, and I think maybe he got that to be that way because of his mother, Marge. George was a mama's boy. He could never say no to his mom. You see, ever since he was a child, George was always at his mother's beck and call. He had no time to sit down. George, do this. George, get me that. Wash the clothes, scrub the floor, see who's knocking at the door. Matter of fact, she still controls him today. He never says no to mom. He does have some accounting background and he uses it wisely. You ever notice that he always comes early to a meeting or event? That's because he uses the FIFO method. First in, first out. That's why he usually stands near the exit most of the time, because he reminds me of Houdini, a great disappearing act. Always working hard no matter what the job. Back in 2007, when he became a grandfather for the first time, George and his wife Pat went to San Francisco for newborn triplets. And all those people went there to help out, and George never realized how difficult it was. He never imagined how hard it would be, and said, quote, "It was like a never-ending conveyor belt of babies that never stopped moving, feed, bathe, burp, and never-ending poopy diapers." I must say that George has been kind to me financially, even though indirectly. Do you ever notice when George speaks, he frequently uses the phrase, "at this point in time"? Well, about a year ago, I went to Parks Racetrack with my dad, and I really was taking a beating, so much so that we were going to leave before the last race was finished. The only thing that made me stay was because there was a horse named "at this point in time." He was a long shot listed at 20 to 1 in the program, and I'm looking at the tote board and it's showing 32 to 1. The horse was really a dog, but because of the name, I told my dad, I have to bet this horse. And ka-ching, I went home a big winner that day instead of a big loser, so thank you, George. In closing, let me say that I served with George as a supervisor for 22 years. And halfway through that, his firm wanted to hire me. And knowing we often battled as supervisors, the only way I was going to take that job was if we didn't let politics and business stand in the way of friendship. It didn't, and I would like to end my roast with a poetical reference I made to George at my last public meeting as a supervisor on December 19, 2007. Always fast moving, but this year hit the skids when his daughter Kim gave him 3 grandkids. Sometimes George couldn't see the forest for the trees, but he made sure he helped wean those 3 babies. Tightest budget-minded person I ever did know, he always tried to keep our township taxes low. On agenda items, we often battled on the floor, and sometimes you could hear he and I roar. Issues like parking, cell towers, and signs, though we disagreed, never did he undermine. So although we battled and often fought hard, we never got rattled, holding each other in high regard. I worked with George only 10 feet away, as many would think to my dismay. But between our work and supervisor strife, George has become a part of my life. So although we shout, argue, and disagree, as my wife would point out, you see George more than me. And by the way, I know he won't tell you this, but his name is pronounced Komelasky, and so many people say Komelasky. But either way, I consider him very rare, a true friend. Thank you.
Good death. Yeah. That's it.
You know, you wouldn't think of it, but George and President Barack Obama have some things in common. First, they've been elected and served the people. Second, they care deeply about their constituencies. Third, they like to make decisions on their own. And yes, George is by far the best decision maker I've ever seen. He's very quick to make decisions because that's his normal answer is usually no. Just about anything you want to do. I'm trying to teach him to spell the word yes, but it's been a struggle. And he's a demanding taskmaster. He accepts nothing at face value. One of his favorite comments to me, particularly when we are doing the budget, is that he says, I don't see any sweat on your brow. So I carry this little bottle of sweat and I just sweat. That usually throws him off a bit. George also, as contrarian as he can be and as independent as he likes to be, he gets along very well with all the other board members. And they do rarely disagree, although once in a while there is a little tiff, but it's usually resolved very quickly. And I thought I'd share with you just a picture of the board and the dais and show you the board here deliberating on an issue. So our next speaker is Vincent Dion. Vince was a board member in Northampton in more recent time, and I know he's one of George's good friends, and he's got a few things to say here.
Thank you, and again, thanks for having the opportunity, giving me the opportunity to speak this evening on my good friend George. A lot of things that I had on mind I've already said, so I know it's going to be a reoccurring theme. So I'll try to just keep on the theme of King George. I'm a man of props, so I wanted to make sure I gave George his due. Here's the crown for you. It was hard to get. Burger King stopped giving out the crown. And when I went to Burger King to get the crown, the manager actually had to go in the back and find me some. Spray paint, that's fun. Thank you. It's good to see the return of King George. One of the things that George loves to do is golf, and many people in this room have golfed with George. For a show of hands, how many people have golfed with George in this room? And what else? We always prepare things when you go golfing with George. Has anybody have any ideas of what they would bring with George, how they prepare to go golfing with George? Everyone?
Bring Kevin.
Jerry has a hard hat, so we can see him.
We'll replace the crown.
Oh, look at this. Tom's coming up. You always need a case of Stolies when you golf with George.
This is for the first 9 holes.
That's right. That's not the 19th hole, that's the first 9. Craig's coming up with some balls. Always have some extra balls. Dick, look, Dick's coming up with 80 pounds of sand. Dick, you're doing excellent with that sand. Oh, we have some more golf balls coming up. He has a snorkel.
Yeah, George.
Somebody must put some
Yeah, a lot of times
water there.
people don't realize that George cannot swim, and he likes to hit the ball in the water all the time. So as a result, we have to get a little snorkel mask to find the ball for him.
George doesn't always hit the ball in the hole, but wherever George is, now we have a pin for him. So George can, wherever he hits it, that's where the hole's going to be. Nick, come on up, guys. And going back to the sand theme, we have a couple rakes coming up for George.
You always did like the beach.
And since Pete was trying to take your balls, he's going to give them back to you now. Come on up, everyone, come on up. Bob's going to communicate with you a little. When you hear that noise, instead of yelling 4, you know George just hit the ball. And we have a flak jacket too, because that's always very important to have when you're golfing with George.
Yeah, we got it.
And finally, just in case you are golfing with George, you want to know where he is at all times. And again, we always have a wonderful time golfing with George. Even though golfing is not safe with George, I'm going to upgrade George's township-approved safety device and increase it with a King George helmet and crown.
Oh, it has the logo and everything.
Moving on, I go a little bit more of a serious side. I'm not a man of poetry, but I have a Robert Frost poem, and it's Canis Major. The great overdog, that heavenly beast, with a star in one eye, gives a leap to the east. He dances upright all the way to the west, and never drops once on his 4 feet to rest. I'm a poor underdog, but tonight I will bark with the great overdog that runs through the dark. Thank you, George. George taught me during the many battles that we had in my short 6 years from 2005 to 2011, we had quite a few battles in the township. George always taught me to try to do the right thing. No matter what you think, you sit, you start with the right thing. Usually, the right thing is George's idea. And I appreciate the lessons that he's taught me. Northampton Township has benefited from your enduring years of leadership. The county has benefited from your many years of leadership, vision, and patience as well. George, you're a good man, and I consider you a mentor, friend, and a brother. Most importantly, I'm a better man for knowing you. Thank you. Thank you to BCATO for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Vince. That was great. You know, George served on the board during a period of unprecedented growth in Northampton. And he managed that growth well, and he championed a lot of new construction projects and facilities that now serve our residents. And I just wanted to share a couple of them with you. First, our phenomenal library that serves about 40,000 people a year. We also boast a senior center that is one of the best senior centers in the county. We have a Veterans Memorial Park that George was pretty much solely responsible for. We have a municipal park that is second rate to none. And our administration building is enduring and will serve us for the future. Our next speaker is someone who's familiar to all of us, a long-term commissioner, Charlie Martin.
Thank you, Bob. I didn't know I would be sitting next to George at dinner, and I also didn't know his lovely wife Pat was going to be here, and I also thought this was going to be a roast, so we will proceed. So when Dan McPhillips called and asked me if I would be a roasteur, I of course wanted to know who was going to be the roastee. And he told me it was the unanimous choice of the board to be George Komelasky because there was so much more material about George than anybody else that they could think of. I also envisioned how many people would love to be able to roast George Komelasky. And then I thought, I got nothing to lose because I don't work for George. George does a little bit of work for the county, so I could just proceed and have a good time and move ahead in that vein. But as I thought about it, I'll never forget the first time that I met George, although I'll keep trying to do that. And I'd like to say, you know, that George is kind, and he's thoughtful, considerate, and understanding, and courteous. I'd like to say all those things, but I really can't. What can you say about a man who is admired and revered and loved by everybody? I can start by saying he's not the man we're honoring tonight. And I thought, why should I say nice things about George? I'd really rather tell the truth. At least George is not obnoxious like so many other people I know. He is obnoxious in a different and worse way. And he's not as bad as people think. He's much worse. George has no equal. Everybody is better. And if you didn't know it, George has an inferiority complex, fully justified. And if you talk to George and have met with him long enough, you know he has an answer for everything, usually the wrong one. And he has a simple motto in life. If at first you don't succeed, that's par for the course. And George, talking to him, he's been known to have a low opinion of other people. He considers them equals. And he certainly doesn't suffer from stress because he's a carrier. George, over the years, he used to be arrogant and he used to be obnoxious. But now, it's really just the opposite. He's obnoxious and arrogant. But he has a mind like a steel trap, always closed. But you know, people really don't complain about George's shortcomings. It's about his long stayings. And some people, even right here in Northampton, view George as an asset. And others say they're off by 2 letters. But George just wants people to accept him as he is, which is very unusual because most people want to be liked. And some friends have really tried to help George out. And they told him to be himself. And they really couldn't have given him any worse advice if they had tried. But George, don't think that me insulting you, was difficult. It's really been my pleasure. But I know this evening is all in fun. And I've known George many years, starting out when I was a supervisor down in Upper Southampton many, many years ago. And we worked together with George on several projects, and then I got to go to the county, continue to work with George. I've seen some of the things that George does behind the scenes that people don't know about to help Bucks County Community College, for one, in a major way, and help the Bucks County veterans. certainly Northampton is still a community to be envied by many people, and all the good things that you've heard about that have happened in Northampton, and George has been there through them all, very responsible for many of them. And I certainly want to just make sure you know this was all kidding, and want to wish George very well, and I really look forward to being able to continue to serve with him for a few more years. And I know George has the last word here tonight, so all I will say in closing, it's been an honor to be George's friend all these years.
Here he is.
Nice job.
I guess it's time to say some nice things about George. I've worked with George, well, I've known George for probably 30 years. Almost, anyway. Working in Upper Southampton with Charlie, and in the town next door in Northampton, working on things like our trash collection consortium. Had an opportunity to get to know George, but really got to know him now, obviously, working in Northampton for the last 8.5 years. And I can honestly tell you that George is a person who cares deeply about the community. He does, as Vince said, always wants to do the right thing, and he doesn't put politics or personal feelings into the mix when it comes to doing the right thing. I've seen George be extremely compassionate. He supports our employees. George is always the one showing up first at funerals for folks who pass away that are related to our folks, or even our employees themselves. Unfortunately, we've had some of those situations. I see George thinking ahead. He looks ahead, and he wants his decisions to be right for the future, not just for the present. I know he has an extremely strong faith, and I know he's generous to a fault. He's not afraid to make tough decisions either. He does it routinely. And I would say he's demanding, but he's very fair. He challenges me, he challenges our administration, and he challenges us to be the best that we can be, and I think we need that. I think every board, I should say, should have a George Komelasky on the board. Not more than one, please, just one. But every board needs that. And I am honored and humbled to work for such a person. So it's been a great evening. One last thing from me, to the supervisors in Upper Makefield, Warminster, and Warrington. I'll be looking for a job tomorrow. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I almost forgot. George, you have a few minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you for the honor, I think. I knew nothing about this other than the fact that as a member of the board, we had talked about having this opportunity to have a roast. I think, as Mr. Pellegrino indicated, my first reaction was no. Wasn't sure that it was going to be a good idea. I think it proved me right. And I don't know why Bob is telling everybody that he has to wait till tomorrow. I think we have enough pictures with the board members, and we'll be able to have that taken care of tonight. But then, as many of you may know, with the lack of time that Bob has spent in Northampton and spent in other municipalities, we thought he was working someplace else anyhow. You know, I do get a chance to look at these pictures and the captions that are up there, I know they weren't Bob, so they had to be his sidekick, Mr. Wayne, who obviously is being overpaid and that too will not have to wait till tomorrow. But it's nice to see that they can poke fun and feel secure in their job. And knowing that Bob's worked for probably, I guess, close to 40 or 50 of the 54 municipalities. Some more than once, some many times altogether. But it's I think it's good to have people like Jamie and Bob, who you can really count on to have your back. You know, you sit there and you say, what can you do about when somebody comes forward and says these kind words to you? And Pete Palestina, 22 years we served with the board together. We had some of the greatest knockdown dragouts that could take place.
Amen.
But when we went out on the floor, we were pretty much, united at that point in time. We had, just a great bunch of supervisors. And the next day, Pete would come into work and sit there and do nothing. And 22 years of that, he was able to work on getting things done at the Board of Supervisors. But we were glad to have Peter with us because you had to have somebody who was your token Italian. He was frequently known as the Marlboro Man. You may not know Peter, but he barely goes 10 or 15 minutes without having at least 4 or 5 cigarettes at a time, too. And I think it has affected him in some of the stories that he's told. So you can't believe everything that he said. Just the last part, where he was saying some nice things, that was the part that I think really rang true. So you can remember those. And what can I say about Vince Dion? Vincent was there, and he always was somebody who said, I'll get even with you, I guess when he first ran for supervisor, and he was opposed by some people, myself among them, and it just goes to show you that I didn't make the right decision all the time, because I backed the wrong side in that race, and Vincent went on to his glorious days as a member of the Board of Supervisors of Northampton. What I am glad to hear is that he understands that my answer to a question is generally the right answer. So it's taken him a while, and in 6 years we've welcomed him back on the board at any time. I can't think of a member that we would like to see him be able to replace and be able to give me another vote for that right answer that we've seen. All these golf things that are out there, give me a break, guy. You work hard, you play hard. You get out there and you try and do what you can to have a little bit of relaxation. I don't know there's that much Stoli. Probably a little bit of Stoli, but again, most of these were early in the morning that you'd go out golfing, so you didn't have too much Stoli. But you worked on it as the day went on. It wasn't as bad as what people said. I've been in some foursomes with many of you out there, and I can tell you that it's difficult for me, and it was very humbling for me over the years to play customer golf, where I had to shoot 4 shots purely to help those with me play golf. It took a long time. It took a long time for me to get that down with Charlie Martin. I hit the ball and you'd go 15 or 20 feet, and He'd say, hey, another good drive, George. We'd be playing Charlie's Ball next. So it was something you had to do, you know, but he came along, you know. One of the great things about having Charlie out on the golf course was he always had a good Churchill cigar, you know. I mean, he always had a good cigar that he was able to bring with you and make you understand that the game of golf was not so much the score that you had, but it was the opportunity to have fellowship and a good time. And he made sure that he laughed at everybody who was with him. So my part as much as I could to try and make this game look better than it really was. On a serious note, I thank you for this honor. I want to tell you that I guess after 30 years, it is something that presents a lot of opportunity for people to take some shots at. Somebody said that he's a good guy and he doesn't take things personally. I don't take them personally, but I do get even. So I'm sure that those people around this room who were able to come up, give me these wonderful props, give me these wonderful presents, have those kind words for me, will receive in kind and in a greater level than what they were able to do to me. Last serious thing I want to say is, again, thank you, and to everybody out here, thank you for what you do for your communities. You know, we are very blessed in Bucks County to have some great municipalities, some great governments out there, whether it's at the county level or straight down through the municipalities, the townships and boroughs, the tax collectors, the auditors, and the dedication of the supervisors out there. Most of this is all done with the blessing of the Managers Association, and whatever they want, as long as we do is what the managers say, we can be successful in how we move things forward. I know that Mr. Pellegrino was able to have his friend Mr. Manfredi train him for years, and he showed Bob how to get things done properly, and he's moved on to.
I gotta help him in every situation.
I think one of the props got me. Let's find out. But again, thank you for this. It was a wonderful evening, and to be the first person to get the roast, as I say, paybacks are hell. Thank you.
Good.
All right, on a serious note, we put together a proclamation, and it's in honor, obviously, of George Komelasky. Whereas George F. Komelasky has been a resident of Northampton Township in Bucks County for more than 40 years, serving as the Vice President of the Commercial Insurance Sales and Consulting for Pace & No Incorporated Insurance after graduating from LaSalle University with a Bachelor of Science in Business Management. And whereas during his time in Bucks County, George F. Komelasky has established himself as not only a living encyclopedia of information about all things related to Bucks County, but also as a passionate and sincere advocate for many of the topics and issues that impact our community and lives each day. And whereas George F. Komelasky has been an integral part of Northampton Township for more than 30 years as a member on the Board of Supervisors, donating his talents, energy on a day-to-day basis to improve the quality of life of the community. And whereas simultaneously, George F. Komelasky has served as a Bucks County Association of Township Officials for more than 30 years, utilizing his political acumen to establish a legislative voice of Bucks County municipalities and strengthen the education of its members. And whereas George F. Komelasky has been made time to advocate on many political campaigns and committees, serve on authorities, foundations, associations, conservancies, societies, and boards, and mentor those willing to help their communities. Now, therefore, on this 24th day of September 2015, the Executive Board of Bucks County Association of Township Officials extends its sincerest congratulations to George F. Komelasky for his over 30 years of compassionate, dedicated service to his township and tireless efforts on behalf of the county and all municipalities.
We're just going to take a 2-minute break. We're going to set up the panel.